Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Minnesota Rockstars podcast. And today we have with us the president of Minnesota Bowhunters, and that is Nick Amunrud. Nick actually was down at the state capitol about a month ago, giving his testimony on where he feels and where Minnesota Bowhunters feel crossbows fit into the archery season. They proposed a different season for crossbows, and he kind of shed some light on their thoughts on that. Also, I asked Nick where he felt the big push came from to have full inclusion for everyone with crossbows, and he kind of shed some light on that as well. So it's kind of eye-opening to myself, and I think it'll be pretty eye-opening for every one of you guys as well. So with that, we're going to get to the podcast here, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hey, before we get started here, if you haven't already heard, we have started up our own apparel store online. So if you're looking to get some sweet Minnesota Rockstar apparel, some swag, you can check it out. It's on our Facebook page. We have the link on there. Also on our website, you can go and check that out. We have anything from hats, mugs, sweatpants, sweatshirts, t-shirts, you name it. It's pretty sweet. So hope you guys check it out, and let's get going with the podcast. All right, hey, welcome back, everyone, to another episode here. I am with Nick here from Minnesota Bowhunters, and today we're here to discuss crossbows. It's a hot topic in the state of Minnesota and other states, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get somebody in here who's knowledgeable with crossbows and very up-to-date in the state of Minnesota with crossbows. Nick, thanks for joining me here today. Why don't, before we get going with any questions, why don't you just kind of let everybody know who you are, kind of what you do, and then also explain kind of Minnesota Bowhunters a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm Nick Amunrud. I used to be the vice president of Minnesota Bowhunters, the original MBI. And on Tuesday, we had a board meeting. I was elected president during that meeting. So just trying to, promote, protect, and kind of foster archery and bow hunting in Minnesota is kind of our goal. We were very, very involved on the advocacy side at the beginning of the year, just due to the legislative session and how that kind of plays out. And we're looking at doing just a lot more community events kind of throughout the rest of the year. So, yeah, Minnesota Bowhunters started in 1946. It's 79 years old now. So, but we've got a good crew. We had a couple of years that we really slowed down, but the new guys that came on board on Tuesday, I'm very excited about what we're going to be able to do over the next couple of years, and just try to really support archery is kind of our goal. So the group, I mean, is it just kind of local men and women, or is it people throughout the state? Who's all part of the group? Yeah, so it's a statewide organization. So there's different contacts with different archery clubs, and then we're kind of spread out. Like I'm down in Southwest Minnesota. We've got guys up in Hibbing, middle of state Hutchinson, and then Rochester, just all around the state. But yeah, we got some work to do as far as legislative side. It would have been nice to have a couple more people helping out, but we were able to actually see some success with the guys we had, and yeah, it's just kind of all around, and that's also kind of a hard thing is being spaced out. It's like where you go to shoot, it's a long drive no matter where you go. So trying to find a central location to kind of have our meetings and stuff is usually a challenge, but we make it work. So,
well, I live right in the central part of Minnesota here, so you guys could all meet at my place if you want.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your experience, I guess, but like you said, you went down to the Capitol a few weeks ago, and kind of this is how I kind of learned about yourself and what you guys are all doing. I was actually on the way to South Dakota on a turkey trip, and I was just kind of scrolling through Facebook a little bit, and your video popped up where you were kind of presenting down at the Capitol on crossbows. First things first, how do you get put on the agenda to speak down at the Capitol? How does that work? You know somebody down there, or how did that work?
So I will say, like, this is the first year that I've followed politics to this level. So it's real confusing, especially when you first get into it. And it's still like, I'm no expert. I know enough to kind of get by. So what happens is you have the House and the Senate. Both of those chambers have committees, and all the committees kind of handle different policy and appropriation for kind of their topic. So there's a natural resource, environmental policy, and like finance committee in the House. Then there's a environmental, it's like environment, legacy, and climate committee in the Senate. So you have to be checking during the legislative session. So if you're looking from like January, February is really good to start looking. So there's a lot of bills that get introduced. You don't get a good notification of what's introduced. So you have to kind of just be checking what bills are introduced. You can search by description or bill title, just kind of what you're interested in. And then once there's a bill that you're interested in, they give you the kind of a couple days before the committee meeting, they put out the agenda and what bills are going to be discussed. So you have to be on it, like following it very closely. And when you see something you want, it's a little bit of a process on the website, but there's like an opportunity for public testimony. You can submit a written testimony and then check a box if you want to be in-person testimony as well. So that's what I did in the House. When it first was introduced in the House, I provided a written testimony, first time ever doing that. And then I showed up to that House committee and testified against the full inclusion of crossbows. And I did the same thing in the Senate, but I will say there's not a lot of notification. So you have to be checking frequently or hope you have someone that lets you know. So when it came up in the House, I had someone that actually told me it was coming up. I'm like, oh shoot, I better get up there, because I didn't know about it till they told me about it. Otherwise I would have missed that myself. But gotta take advantage of it when you see it. So
did you have a time limit? Because I know there was probably more that you wanted to express, but did you have a time limit?
The House, I think they like to limit to around 2 minutes. Some people go longer, but yeah, you kind of get the vibe of, let's wrap it up if you talk too long. I will say, like, I was a little nervous, especially that first time going in, because, I mean, you're talking in front of all your House legislators. Like, it's a little daunting. Plus, the Republican chair of that committee is sitting right next to me, and he's an author for the crossbow bill to continue the inclusion. So it's like I got a guy that doesn't like what I'm probably saying about him right next to me, and he's got the power in that committee. So yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking, but I made it through. So good experience.
That's one of the questions I was going to ask you, was how nervous were you going into this?
Oh, I think you could hear my voice. I was a little nervous. Yeah, you're sitting at the end of the table. I mean, you kind of got your own table, but they just kind of circle around you, and some of them. Well, there was a lot of people in that committee that were signed on as authors to it too, so I wasn't going into neutral territory. It was, it was nerve-wracking, but if you have the opportunity to do it, I think it's a good experience. So
yeah, that I don't know, surrounding you like that, like a pack of wolves or something. I don't know if it's for intimidation or what, but
Yeah.
well, let's get to this. Let's explain to everybody what your message was when you had this opportunity to speak down there.
And my message is kind of evolved, I guess, over time. So I'm a very big proponent that crossbows are not archery and do not belong in archery season. So when we first started, it was more, let's see it expire and just return to a 60 plus and disability allowance. Because, I've talked to a lot of people, and there really aren't a lot of people that were against that at that time back in 2022. But after learning that, it had bipartisan support for crossbow use, and the Republican co-chair of that committee crossbow hunts, and then I learned that the Democrat chair of the Senate committee, he crossbow hunts. So I kind of learned that I need to be a little more tactful with what I'm saying and a little more, open to different ideas. So what we inevitably what we kind of started to push for was, instead of going back to what it was, trying to create a compromise of, hey, we realize a lot of people have bought these. They want to use them because it's an easier, more effective tool. What can we do that's palatable for our legislators so they're not pissing 20,000 people off that have bought crossbows, and they're just something that they can vote on that feels bipartisan. So we ended up pushing for having a separate crossbow season with a delayed start, and we really feel that delaying that start until the start of the firearm opener is very, very important, which would still provide 7.5 weeks of crossbow use, which you can only hunt for 2 weeks with a rifle, 2 weeks with a shotgun, and then 2 weeks with a muzzleloader. So, it's almost double what you could do if you're rifle and muzzleload. So it seemed like a good compromise, and I think that's what we're most likely going to be pushing for next year, or next session. So yeah, just looking for a compromise, because the likelihood, because of how many people have bought crossbows and because we have elected officials that use them, we're probably not going to be able to go back to what it was. But I think we can have a reasonable compromise that at least tries to make both sides somewhat happy, I'll say. But
So just to make it clear to everybody out there, you're not in support of saying no crossbows. You're just focusing on pushing it back. And what's your main reason for that, I guess?
it's not archery. So like we have a designated archery season that was established for archery. It should be for archery, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll hear a lot of arguments for crossbows, and you can very easily apply every single one of those arguments to a whole bunch of different tools for hunting that are not archery. Like I like to give the example of like a flintlock muzzleloader, is a lot of, or if not all of the same arguments for that could be applied to using a muzzleloader instead of a crossbow. It's just not it's not archery. The archery season is a very unique opportunity. It's a 3.5 month season, and it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be to bow hunt. It's an archery season. So I think respecting the distinctiveness of that season and just being a proponent of archery, I think is really important. And that's what we're kind of trying to, we're more leaning into, we support archery. We're not necessarily against, like I firearm hunt, I muzzleload, and I bow hunt. So I'm not like a archery purist, but man, the archery, I love bow hunting. It's a way different experience than hunting with a 12 gauge or muzzleloader. So
you said it's not bow hunting. So I'm the head boys basketball coach, and we put in plays, right? And every play that I have a hand gesture for. In case the crowd is loud, I can make a hand gesture, and the kids can look over at me and know exactly what that play is. They don't need to hear me. And we put in a play this year, and we were trying to come up with a name for it. And one of my assistant coaches said, "Hey, call it crossbow." And I said, "Okay, perfect. I know the exact hand gesture that I'll use for crossbow." And basically, what I'm mimicking is shouldering the crossbow and pulling the trigger. And I said, "Boys, this is going to be
that probably got you in
this
trouble.
is gonna be our hand signal for crossbow." And they're like, "We're not doing that." I said, "Why? That's bow hunting, right? I'm just holding the gun up, or the crossbow up here on my shoulder and pulling the trigger. That's a crossbow. That's shooting a gun." I said, "No, that's the universal sign for bow hunting is getting it up on the shoulder and pulling the trigger." And needless to say,
So
we didn't put that in, but I thought it was funny during practice because everybody knows, my stance on everything. And one kid, "I'm not getting suspended for making it look like I'm shooting a gun." I'm like, "Hey, it's a bow, not a gun. It's a bow."
So I thought it was hilarious. I actually got one of the he was a Democrat. What was he, like the legislative assistant for one of the Democrats in the House, and I got him to Google one of the new Raven crossbows, and because I was trying to make the argument like, hey, these are not archery. Like fundamentally, it's a very, very different tool. So I got him to Google it. He's like, yeah, that's not a bow. I'm like, I know. So what's actually kind of nice is like some of our representatives, like they shot an asp, like in like school, so they have some familiarity with archery on a competition level. A lot of them don't bow. Most of our elected representatives don't hunt in general, so you're kind of pulling hairs trying to explain like what the difference is because they have no idea. So a lot of what we were doing is just trying to educate our representatives about the difference, and then showing that not everyone likes this. Like it's not a non-controversial issue. Which when we started, when we first started calling representatives in January, I was the first person this year to call in and bring up the topic of crossbows because it hadn't been introduced yet, but I knew it was coming because expiration was coming up. And when I first called, they thought everyone loved it because of the widespread adoption and just how many people were buying them. And they weren't hearing a lot from people that didn't like them saying anything else. So they thought people loved crossbows, and because they just weren't hearing the other side. So once we started really pushing at it, we made a difference, and we're just a small group of guys that are passionate about archery, and it's actually kind of hopeful because we were calling representatives and getting callbacks, like because no one's calling them. Like it's something like people, well, they don't know the process, and then it seems it's kind of like a barrier. Like, oh, I'll never be able to contact my representative. It's like, well, you actually can if you do it at the right time when they're not, at the end of the committee cycle where it's just they're trying to ram stuff through. If you catch them early or in the off season, you can have conversations with them, and we did.
I think
so
that's one thing to keep in mind too. You always hear, if you're not happy with this, call your legislators and let them know you're not happy. But I guarantee you they're getting the same thing on the other side when people push for a bill or whatever. They're promoting, call and say how awesome this is. So they hear all these positive things. So whether it gets pushed through or maintained or whatever, that's probably the other side of things. And then on top of that, it's awesome that they were able to hear the other side, and that's how you make things better in the end. I mean, if you just hear one side and continue to hear, you're good, whether it's at sports, you're good, you're awesome. Well, you're not really going to strive to get better or fix anything because you're being satisfied with being good because everybody's telling you you're good. But when you hear that other side, it kind of opens up another door and hopefully gets people to think, differently and a little outside the box. Overall, how do you feel your message was perceived down there?
So it was a little trickier than I thought it might be, because I didn't think going into it that it had bipartisan support among the Democrats and Republicans for removing the expiration. But with time, we did make a difference. Like we did. So a lot of people don't care. Like, I'll just say that. A lot of our representatives, it's a non-issue for them. It's just not a lot of people that do it, and it's hunting, and they don't hunt. So I guess I hate to say it, they don't care, but they really kind of don't. Some of them do, a lot of them don't. But it's just trying to, explain the difference and why we feel it's important, and just trying to do the best we can, I guess. So yeah, some of them took it well, some of them didn't, but we're trying to be respectful with them. And what I actually did was, because you can make emotional arguments, but if you can have data to support what you're saying, I think, especially for that group of people where they're voting on policy, having data helps a lot. So I went to every Midwest state and I just started collecting all of their license sales and harvest data and just compiling a spreadsheet so I could show like Minnesota versus Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, just show the differences between all the Midwest states and be able to provide decades of crossbow data to support our argument against them. So we've got a lot of data now, and it's just a lot of numbers. It's hard to post data and have it be shared a lot. So, but it's just one of those things where having the data and then being persistent with calling, it does make a difference. So,
what were some of the biggest eye-opening numbers that you saw based on that data that you collected from the other states?
So what I didn't know going into it is, let's see, I got a whole bunch here, but 79% of the hunters in Ohio buy an archery license now. Typically, that's like 20 to 30%. So we've got almost 80% of the hunters in Ohio buying an archery license, and they're killing about 58% of their total buck harvest is during the archery season. So Minnesota, we're typically around like 11, 12% of our total buck harvest is during the archery season. And it's going to take some time because I think a lot of people are still hesitant to buy a crossbow just because it's kind of in limbo right now. And they're expensive and they don't last a whole long, they just don't last. So it's one of those things where I think if it had been like fully passed in 2023, I think a lot more people would have bought them. But over time, we can look at the data from all the other states, and Minnesota, right now we're at 12%. It's very likely we will be over 50% of our total buck harvest is going to come from the archery season. And it could even be over 60% because we're a one buck state, and a lot of these other states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, well, Iowa doesn't have crossbows, but they're 2 buck states. And Wisconsin, they can only shoot 1 buck with archery equipment, and they have a separate crossbow season, but it's the same length as their archery season. but they can only shoot one buck with archery equipment. So if they could shoot 2 bucks with archery equipment, I think they would be at a higher percentage of buck harvesting in the archery season, because you just wouldn't have the incentive to gun hunt later in the year because you already shot your deer. So
I think that's one thing that is kind of I don't know, maybe not a misconception, but Minnesota technically isn't a 1 buck state because we can party hunt and we can shoot it.
You can shoot as many,
you can shoot as many bucks as you want as long as you have tags from and you're party hunting.
Technically, you have to be within eyesight or whatever, or hearing. But I've known several people that have shot their wife's deer, and she doesn't hunt. So
well, that's the thing now with crossbows, right? So I know of a story where an individual shot a deer with his bow and used his wife's tag. This was back before,
right.
This was in the late 90s, right? And he ended up getting turned in to the DNR, and because he put his wife's tag on there, well, the DNR shows up at the place and says, "Where's your bow?" to the wife, and she says, "Well, right here." And he says, "Okay, pull that back for me," and she can't pull it back. Well, right there's your evidence that she didn't shoot that deer. Well, now with crossbows, anybody can pull a trigger. so when it comes to party hunting, and that's why I wish that's one of the things. I mean, that's right up there. I mean, with the topics in my mind, the hot topics in the state. I mean, it's wolves, it's crossbow, and in my mind, the topic that doesn't get pushed as much as it should. I think it's party hunting, because so many. I shouldn't say so many people, but there are people out there that abuse it, and it's just frustrating that that there are people out there that will do that. But it's just another one of those things that just, I don't know, gets under my skin a little bit. But in my mind, party hunting, I think from a conservation officer standpoint would simplify things a lot. And then just from a natural resource standpoint, and ethics and all that good stuff, if it was just pushed aside and just says your tag is good for your tag, I think in my mind would help things out a lot.
And I guess the silver lining on that, anyone can pull a trigger, but have you ever shot a crossbow? Like played around with one? Like I would, if I was at CO, I would hand the wife the crossbow and tell her to load it.
Sure.
Because it's a process. Like I was like, you can use a crank, but that's still a process too. And they even got electric ones now where you just kind of push a button and it pulls it back. But actually, like it by standing on it and actually like hand drawing it, it's a challenge. Like I guess it's like shooting a bow where it's more technique, and I just suck at it because I've barely done it. But it's not something I would be comfortable handing one of my kids to use or hunt with probably at all ever, because I have a lot of concerns about that. And it's like I'm a big firearm guy, and I tend to think crossbows are more dangerous than a firearm, just because there's a lot more exposed and moving parts, and people just don't kind of realize that a little bit. But
no, I agree. I was my father-in-law. He I don't know, I think he's in his 70s. He has Parkinson's, and he helped me build my garage, and he loves hunting, but obviously with his Parkinson's, his stability isn't there. And I actually bought him a crossbow for helping me build my garage, and so I was able to shoot that. But yeah, when you're cranking that thing, there is so much tension and pressure there. The other day I was like, if this thing explodes, I mean, that could be big time injuries right there.
Well, I actually got I'm gonna do another kind of stupid Facebook video. So I got my neighbor. He was one of the guys I hunt with. He let me use his crossbow, so I got that in my basement right now, and I got a video planned. But it'd be kind of, I wonder if they're drop safe, because I'm not entirely sure. Because like you'll see guys walking around with them loaded just around the woods, and I'm like, I don't know about that. And then if you read the user manual, it says, do not fire from an elevated position. I'm like, okay, well, it crosses off your blind, tree stands. Like, but that could be, it could be every bow they say not to fire from an elevated position. I was just nitpicking the crossbow user manuals because just finding ammo against it,
No
really.
doubt.
But it's kind of fascinating too, because I would say, especially like the cheaper crossbows, like if you're not going to spend over $1,000 on one, it's very common to have like 200 shots is kind of the upward limit of what you can do before you have to replace the string, just because of how much tension is on that. They just don't last as long. Like you could shoot your compound 200 shots a day and have it be fine. But, the crossbow, it's more maintenance too. It's, you have to lube the rail and really watch your string. And I would wonder if, if you're hunting in more adverse conditions, like snow, rain, I don't think the life expectancy on those strings is great. If you buy some of the really high end ones, I'm sure they got their own kind of like really high quality strings, probably last longer. But it's a little concerning though, because I think a lot of the people that buy them just assume they can shoot them, and most people don't read user manuals anyway. And then if you do read them, it's like all of those components are not covered under warranty. Like any of the moving parts are, like, maybe the trigger, but like every string, everything not covered under warranty, and they do blow up, and it's just yeah. But that's kind of going down a rabbit hole of, I think a lot of people have bought something that they don't realize what the maintenance is like on them. And I think,
I was actually just talking with my brother about that. I won a 300 mag one time, and I already had a 308 that I was using my rifle, and I was in college, so I didn't have a whole lot of money. So I was like, okay, I'm going to sell this gun and take that money and buy my first bow, or my second bow. My parents bought me my first one. It was a little outdated, so I'm like, I'm going to buy myself a bow. Well, I sold the 300, bought myself a bow, and now guess where that bow is? It's obsolete. It's gone. I think I gave it to somebody else because it was so outdated. But that's the thing. I mean, you're going to continue to have to upgrade and spend more money. It's a never-ending process with archery. Now, going back to the numbers that you had before, I was doing some research today on the deer harvest numbers, the license sales. I did not see, and I'm guessing because they're just lumping it all together, individual sales for compound bow and individual sales for crossbows. However, I did see stats for crossbow harvest and compound harvest. Yep. So am I correct on that? They didn't keep track of how many people bought a license to crossbow hunt?
No, it's as far as I know, it's under the same license. So we don't actually know the true. Well, I know it's under the same license. I'm not sure. I've never bought a crossbow license, so I don't know if when at the time of purchase, if you have to fill out something that they don't do a report on, which could be the case. I kind of doubt it, but yeah, they just track archery versus crossbow harvest, but we don't know the participation. How many people are actually using a crossbow. I mean, as far as we know, every person that hunted with a crossbow last year shot a deer.
That was
we can't get into that data.
That was my question. What was the success rate of people with crossbows versus success rate of people who use compound traditional archery?
Yeah, and I will say, like, we can look at other states that do track that data to kind of get an idea of what it actually is, but Wisconsin data kind of really sucks because you can buy an archery license and then buy a $3 crossbow upgrade license, So then we don't even know what those people are hunting with. And then I've also heard reports of people having a crossbow license, shooting a PNY buck with a crossbow, but then buying a $3 upgrade for archery and registering it as an archery kill. Which, how many people are doing that? I don't know. Is it honest? No. But it's one of those things where I would like to see better data tracked so that we can make more informed decisions, because we've got a lot of data. Like, I think Ohio's had crossbows since 1976. Given that the crossbows in 1976 suck compared to the ones we get today, but we've got a lot of data. So it's not a, people look at, harvest wasn't significantly up in Minnesota. It's like, okay, well, it's going to take time, right? So like last year we had overall a pretty favorable hunting. Like, just weather was good. We didn't have a lot of snow. It was good hunting last year. And that can vary, if we're only looking at like 2, maybe 3 years of data, just a variation because of natural conditions, like how much corn is out. Was it wet? Was it cold? Was it snowy? There's a lot of variables. So only looking at like 2 to 3 years, you really don't get like half a picture. You get like kind of an idea. But once you can look at states that have had them for a decade, 2 decades, it's like then you can kind of start making some kind of extrapolations on, okay, this is what this state does. This is what's different about this state. How can we apply this state's data to Minnesota and try to make a more informed decision on, what's going to be the impact? Because we have the data, and honestly, I haven't seen anything that shows that allowing crossbows in the entire archery season it doesn't solve the problems they say it will. It just doesn't. The data does not support that. So
I think the other thing too to keep in mind, so crossbows became legal for everyone to use 2 years ago, correct? In 2023.
Yeah, that was the first full year.
So the winter prior to that, I believe, was in 2022 was pretty brutal for the most part. I don't know about you guys down there, but our deer numbers really weren't here 2 years ago. And in my mind, crossbows were out there, but if you don't have the resource to target, because that first year success rate I looked at was pretty similar to previous years, but our deer numbers weren't there. If you have 10 hunters in the woods and everybody's got a crossbow or a firearm, let's just say a gun, but there's only 2 deer out there, the highest your success rate is going to be is 20%. So
I would hate hunting somewhere that's only
right. But like that's something I think that's got to be taken in consideration too when you look at those numbers, is that we didn't have a great deer herd 2 years ago because of that bad winter that we had, or back-to-back winters we had. So I think, in my mind, me personally, I think those numbers were a little skewed. Now, last year, I felt we had a really good deer herd population, and that success rate for archery, I think tied the year 2020 when in the last 10 years. So in the last 10 years, 2020 had the highest success rate for archers, and then this last year, it ended up tying that with like 21.6% or something, because our in my mind, those deer numbers were back up. So I think that's something to take into consideration too, where, okay, this year our deer herd should be sitting pretty good with a pretty mild winter that we had. I expect, in my mind, with crossbows, that the success rate is going to be, this is just me throwing it out there, is going to be at that 21% or even higher again this year. It'll be interesting to see if that number is going to continue to climb over time, and what it could possibly do to, the deer herd. But it'll be interesting. But I think that's one thing that that should be looked at. What was the deer herd like when those crossbows were first introduced in 2023? Because in my mind, I don't think there was a whole lot of deer around. And then last year, obviously, our deer herd was doing a lot better. And in return, you're going to have a higher success rate when there's more deer out there to target.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add a couple things to that. So if you look at our our total deer harvest, it's kind of trending down a little bit, but it's not super drastic. But when you think about our wolf population, like north of you, there's people that don't see deer anymore. Like they're lucky to see a deer during the hunting season. And I don't know how much effort they're putting into it either, because Minnesota doesn't track days hunted. I wish we would, but we don't. And it's another rabbit hole to go down. But so our north Minnesota deer population is going down. Our south deer population is kind of going up. Our total harvest isn't necessarily changing a whole lot, but it's one of those things where I really think if what people don't realize is you can look at your total harvest and what's your archery harvest, but those are your tagged in the back of the truck bucks and deer. It's not your wounded or unrecovered, and it's not your hunting pressure. Because I think you're probably well aware, if you get more people in the woods during early season, where are the deer going? They're going somewhere else. And so I think, and we are taking a lot of gun hunters and converting them into bow hunters with a crossbow. And there are people that are used to hunting the rut, and they tend to not think a whole lot about the wind direction or stand access or just how much hunting pressure they're putting on. Because during the rut, it's like bucks are chasing does. You can kind of get away with a little bit more because you never know what's going to show up. But early season, it's different, and you really have to be cognizant of how you're getting in and out and not spooking stuff. So I think if people, and I'm not saying they're not good hunters, I'm just saying if these new crossbow hunters were really thinking through their hunts, I think that harvest would be significantly higher, because I think what's happening is we're bumping deer off of public land a lot quicker, especially down by me where it's just smaller parcels of public land. It's not thousands of acres. It's 100 acres here, 40 acres here. So deer get bumped off of that quick. And I think the harvest would be significantly higher. And I'm sure it will be over time as people learn that. So it's not something you want to look at 2 to 3 years. You want to look at a decade or two, and we have that data. So
going back to kind of how this all started, who do you feel made the biggest push to legalize crossbows for everyone?
So I know in what? Okay, so MDHA had a chapter vote in 2023 on whether or not their organization would support the use of crossbows. That chapter vote, there was one chapter in particular, one person from that chapter in particular, who really wanted to use a crossbow. And I'm not sure if he owns an archery shop and wanted to sell them. I was going to look into that a little bit more, but that's kind of how it started. So each chapter can put forward things that they would like to see for changes. That's the one that did it. So I don't remember the chapter off the top of my head or anything. I think it's Southeast Minnesota, though. There's another one on the north edge of the cities that I think they were in favor of removing the southern shotgun zone. It is either that or crossbows. But so the MBHA, when they voted between their chapters, it was real close. I think it's 52 or 53% were in favor of crossbows, and the rest weren't. But they lobbied for them. and they also lobbied for them this year. So in 2023 they did, in 2025 they did. That's the only. So of the organizations that actually showed up and testified or submitted any written testimony on the side of crossbows, it was MDHA and Congressional Sportsmen. Their reasoning was, we want to do anything and everything to potentially increase the number of hunters, because we're losing hunters. That's a huge issue. Let's make hunting as easy as possible. Hopefully we get more people involved. Well, if you look at the data, allowing crossbows does not increase the number of hunters. It's not the lowest hole in the bucket. It's not in any state. The people that are going to hunt are going to hunt. Allowing them to use a crossbow during the archery season, it just incentivizes them to use one because it's a 3.5 month season. So, but they're already going to hunt. Like all the kids in youth, they're going to hunt during the firearm or muzzleloader season. If they're a little bit older, 8, 10, then they were probably gonna bow hunt anyway. And there's plenty of youth that are killing deer with a bow. Like it's not impossible. It's, do they want to dedicate the time to it? So yeah, MDHA, Congressional Sportsmen, they were in favor. In the House, we were the only organization against the use of crossbows in the House committee. When it got to the Senate, I with Minnesota Bowhunters, was the only person to testify from either side of the aisle on crossbows. And there was another MSAA. They had a survey of their members, and overwhelmingly, their members did not want to see full crossbow inclusion. So they also submitted a written testimony for the Senate. So yeah, we're just trying to get a lot of support between different archery organizations. There's really not a lot of people involved. It's pretty small. Yeah, there's a lot of people just don't care. And I think if those MDHA chapters, I think if they had the data that I have now to show that it doesn't actually increase hunt like R3 at all, I don't think they would have voted for it the way they did. But they're just concerned. It's like we're losing the baby boomer generation, and we just don't have the younger population to replace them. So is it even reasonable or realistic to expect hunter numbers to grow from the 80s or 90s, given what we have as ground conditions today? I don't know, but the best we can do is just try to get kids outdoors, get them involved with archery, and kind of showcase how unique this season is and what kind of fantastic opportunity it is that almost everyone can already enjoy. Like not being able to use a crossbow doesn't mean you can't hunt the archery season, because 97% of people are capable of drawing a bow. Like it's not a limiting factor. It's just how easy do you want it to be, and how much time are you willing to dedicate to the sport of bow hunting. I enjoy it, but
so let me ask you this. You kind of elaborated on it a little bit. Maybe go into, I don't know, a little more detail on. So obviously what you're saying is MDHA thought by getting everybody out crossbow and hunting would recruit more hunters, but it has not. What in your mind do you think, besides just introducing them to hunting earlier on, what other things or opportunities are there for us to recruit more hunters? What do you think would be like a major key factor? And then I'll go after you.
Okay, so a big focus that people have is deer hunting, right? So we need to get more kids deer hunting, which is great until you look at the state of Minnesota, and a lot of our zones are 1 to 2 deer zones. So if your whole purpose and goal in life is to have kids in the woods as long as possible, does giving them a more efficient long-range tool, is that going to increase the time that they spend hunting or decrease it? I would say it would decrease it, because every time I use a more efficient tool, I get the job done faster. And if you can only shoot 1 to 2 deer, you're going to kill those 1 to 2 deer faster. Unless you're up north of Grand Rapids and you don't have deer. That's a different situation entirely. But I think we put a lot of focus on, the deer season, which is short, right? So we have to get kids involved in the outdoors year round. There's also a lot of parents that they want to make hunting enjoyable and easy for their kids. So they'll do all the off-season stuff. They'll get the stand set up in the right location. They'll do all the trimming. They'll have everything set. And then their kid shows up. They put them in a stand. It's heated. It's comfortable. Buck walks by. They shoot it. Well, I really don't think that is going to instill a lifelong passion for hunting, because they go deer hunting 1 to 2 days a year at that point. So I think if you got to focus on more than just deer hunting. It's the archery season, it's longer, but it's still 3.5 months. It's not year round. So small game, I think our small game numbers have been, just as far as hunter participation, not great. Turkey season is a great opportunity. Rabbit, squirrel. If you listen to some of the bigger hunting personalities, when they were little, they would always be out with their bow shooting stuff, just random stuff. And I think for a lot of people, that access and their parental supervision doesn't allow them to just go out and hunt and just kind of mess around in the outdoors like a lot of us probably did when we were little. I'm pretty young, but kind of get the point. So, it's just it's creating a love for the outdoors, and deer hunting is a part of that. But it shouldn't be your main focus necessarily, because it's short. And if your goal is to get your kid a deer, I would say get them involved with the entire process in the off season, like habitat management, have them plant some trees with you. Just kind of get that fascination and teach them more than just pulling a trigger, I would say. And not speaking from a lot of experience, I got a 3-year-old. She's not hunting yet, so it's one of those things that we'll see if I'm able to follow through on that myself or not. I hope I am, but it's also up to her if she wants to hunt at that point.
I'll tell you what, well, she'll be 8 here in a week, not even a week, at the end of the week here, and then also a 4-year-old, and with myself, I got a podcast going on, I'm filming. But in the mornings too, I'll watch a little outdoor channel or whatever. And I think that's the other thing too, is whatever the parents are doing, that's what the kids are more than likely going to end up doing. They learn from their parents. So if they're around it a lot more, not saying 100% they're gonna fall into it, but there's a better chance. The other day I was just sitting there watching some fishing on TV. I was up early in the morning. Also, my daughter comes walking in, and she sat down with me and she wanted to watch another fishing show. So that's cool. I think, like you said, just kind of planting the seed early and just kind of let that go. I don't know, man. Parents trying to make things easy for their kids. I've never heard of that before.
Well, the parents had a struggle, so now they want to make it almost too easy.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when, all of a sudden, a kid is struggling a little bit. And an adult will say, well, just give it here, I'll do it. It's like, no, let them struggle, let them figure it out. Let them figure out the process, because in the end, that's how you learn. You don't learn by having somebody else do things for you all the time. You learn by doing things yourself. And once you understand the effort that goes into it and the process that goes into it, it's no different than us making our own venison, right? We went through the process, the prep, whether it's food plots, the TSI work, the hanging the stands, the sitting in the cold weather, and then harvesting that deer. and then turning that deer into venison to put on our table for our families, it makes it taste so much better knowing what went into that rather than just, oh, I bought it at the store. There's so much more meaning and value behind that. And it just, I don't know, it's something special. And that's what makes hunting so special. There's so many different processes that take place, so many memories to be made. It's just something to really enjoy. But I think the more you can have your kids around it, exposed to it, let them fail, I think that's important. The other day, I took my daughter out in the woods to do a little turkey hunting, and it was the best case scenario. It was the absolute best case scenario. There was a hen that started calling back to me, and I was explaining why she was calling back. And then all of a sudden, the hen comes into the decoys, and the hen walks away. And then all of a sudden, right behind us, a tom gobbles, and it comes in. You can hear it spitting, drumming, fanning out, walking through the leaves like 2 foot from our blind, and she's just freaking out. And she never got a shot off at it. But in my mind, that was perfect because now that fuels the fire. If she just went out there with me and a big tom comes in, she shoots it, well, that was easy. All right, let's go back home. I'm going to play whatever. Now she keeps telling me, I'm going to go get that tom. At the end of her interview, it's an awesome quote. It is just sweet. She goes, if that tom ever comes back, I'll be here. Like she's just excited to get back out there. So it's something that kind of like yourself, you have kids. Okay, how is this going to work moving forward? Are they going to like hunting? Aren't they going to like hunting? Am I going to do something that will, have them not like hunting? Am I going to do something that will help them like hunting? What is that? It's a process, but I think in the end, just being you and doing what you do, they're going to see the enjoyment that you get from it and more than likely follow suit.
Yeah, you do hear some like horror stories of really bad wounding deer that happens with kids early on, and it turns them off, and it can lead to a lot of just not love for it. So, but yeah, I would say that the opportunity to hunt in Minnesota, it's there. Like anyone right now that wants to hunt the archery season is capable of doing it with or without a crossbow. Like the barrier to entry is, do you want to commit to shooting a bow or not? And we also like hunting's getting kind of expensive. Like you mentioned like you process your own deer. I reckon a lot of people probably don't, but processing costs are up, and you kind of have to look at, with everything that's drawing people, like everything else you could be doing, how do we make hunting worth the effort? Because if you're putting a lot of time and energy and resources into hunting or your hunting land, especially if you're up north, it's like, does it make sense to drive to northern Minnesota for a weekend and not see a deer? Like, are we providing the quality hunting experience that is worth the time and money? Because I think that would help keep people interested and involved as well if it was worth it.
That's the exact point I was going to make. I got sidetracked, but that is the number one thing. If you look at go back and look at those hunter numbers in zone specific, and look at that 300 zone, 200 zone, 100 zone, and look at which zone has decreased in hunters the most. It's up north. And there, in my mind, there's one reason why that is. It's the increase in wolves, and along with that, the bear population. I mean, those are two huge predators of whitetails. And then obviously we had a couple bad winters. That's what people kind of want to blame it on. But the huge influx in predators obviously is playing a huge part. And I've heard numerous people say, why should I take youth up north to go hunting? We're not going to see anything. They're not going to get engaged. They're not going to fall in love with it. So if you look at those numbers, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure the numbers have decreased up north, and in central Minnesota to southern Minnesota, those numbers have actually gone up a little bit. But I think those people that were hunting up north are sliding down this way and now overpopulating these areas. And in return, taken those deer numbers down as well.
So then to add on to that, so the people are used to hunting several thousand acre tracts of land up north. We don't have that central Minnesota, southern Minnesota. So you're taking all these people that used to be able to spread out more. And we have small wildlife management areas. We have small private properties. It's that hunting pressure is a consumptive use of the resource. It's legitimate. It's not selfish to think that. We're actually if all these people shooting crossbows would be shooting a recurve or a compound, we would be all for it because it would help grow our archery community. And because the archery clubs in Minnesota, a lot of them are struggling because people just, I guess it's kind of after COVID a little bit too. It's just people kind of take a step back from community and engagement and events. And our archery clubs need people to show up to events, like getting new board members, new officers. It's like you don't have the volunteer kind of mentality of the people that are currently leaving, just old age, that it's just not in the younger generation as much. We're really fortunate with Minnesota Bowhunters that, our board now we're a bunch of young guys, like 20 to 40 is kind of our range. So we're looking at a pretty good future if we can keep people engaged and involved. And, that's kind of what we're pushing for, is just how do we get people more involved with their communities through archery events. And then on the legislative side, like you have a surprisingly strong voice. Like one of our guys, our new vice president, he emailed he submitted some written testimony in that House committee hearing, and one of the House representatives read what he submitted and talked about his points he provided in that House meeting, which anyone can do that. Literally anyone can submit a written testimony for any committee that they want. It's available. It's a process. If it's something you're interested, I can try to walk you through what I know, but I'm not an expert. Like I said, I've asked a lot of questions, and when I get them on the phone, I'll ask them like, how can I most effectively accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? And they'll tell you, or they'll, some of them early on said, don't be, we see you have a passion. Don't be discouraged when this doesn't go your way. Well, guess what? It didn't not go our way. We got a 1-year extension is what's in the current omnibus. And I guarantee if we hadn't created the backlash this year, there was a bill in the House and Senate. The only bills about crossbows were to remove the expiration. So had we not done what we did, I almost guarantee that expiration would have been removed instead of we have a 1-year extension. So in August, we're going to get the DNR report that kind of says, what the DNR's got for data. And I had a meeting with some DNR representatives probably like 2 weeks ago, and I provided them with all of the data I had collected from all the other Midwest states, and they provided that to their kind of board that's doing the report. So they do listen. I think a lot of hunters in Minnesota have probably got a little discouraged because they feel like management is poor, which in a lot of places that's probably true. But it's also like, if you're not going to be involved, you're not going to be heard, and they won't care. But if you're willing to make your voice heard, and you're willing to show up to testify, you're willing to take the time to call them at the very least, or email, then they at least know that you're thinking about it, and it does move the needle. So it's important. It's very important. I kind of ramble a little bit, but So people are always talking about like how we have a decline in hunters. So what we need more hunters because we're getting a smaller voice. Well, sure, but what percentage of hunters are actually politically involved with advocacy, educating our officials? It's like none. Like us as hunters, we are not doing nearly enough. So I tend to think if we can get more people familiar with and interested in management and knowing that their opinions and voice does matter, that's huge. So yeah, we're losing hunters, but if you can get 20 people to show up to a committee hearing, you're going to make a difference. It doesn't take a lot. So when it comes down to it, you don't need a lot of people. You just need active, involved people, and you will see changes.
So what are your next steps moving forward? I don't want to keep you too much longer, but what are your next steps moving forward here?
So right now we're kind of watching the omnibus. So the House and Senate both have a 1-year extension. We're not following it too close anymore because we were kind of waiting to see what the House was going to do, if they were going to adopt the Senate language or not. It looks like they did. So yeah, so that's kind of wrapped up on the legislative side. Not a lot to kind of follow at this point. We're still gonna, like, the likelihood of it changing at this point, not very good because it's past committee. It's gone through a couple different steps now. So our focus is community events for the rest of the year. Trying to work with different archery clubs, see where we can get Minnesota Bowhunters just involved, because the last couple of years we kind of stepped back probably too much. So now we're just trying to rebuild. We got a good team. I'm very, very happy with the guys that, like, they were very active guys on advocacy, sending a lot of emails, making phone calls, really just helping drive our petition too for some reasonable crossbow restrictions. It's about the tool, not the person. And yeah, so community events, and then probably we're gonna have a banquet probably end of the year, and then I'm thinking probably late fall, maybe real early January. Well, we know it's gonna come up again next year, so we're gonna just try to talk to different representatives, the people that were authors this past session. We're gonna reach back out to all of them and see if we can get them to not be an author on it next year, and just try to support a separate season and a shorter season. Just a little bit of crossbow advocacy. I did hear, I talked to one of the archery clubs in a different state, and they said what's worked for them is going more on the offensive instead of just playing defense all the time. So they're like, if you say that you want to change the firearm season, even by a day, it's going to put them back on their heels a little bit. And so I've been trying to think about, how to go about that too, because all these people, like, a huge argument for crossbows is it's too cold in the firearm season, and it's bad for our joints or whatever. And it's the same people that sit on a bucket in January and ice fish. But yeah, they say it's too cold. So I'm like, well, what if we move the firearm season to the first week in October instead of November? But then we can, because that kind of fixes that problem, doesn't it? I mean, there's gonna be a lot of corn standing down where I'm at, so we'll have to give a different season for farmers so that they can still hunt. But yeah, just trying to think about how to go about that. But really all we want is everyone knows it's not archery. It almost feels like cheating to use one. But we don't blame the people for choosing to use a crossbow because it is legal, right? Like, it's like, I hunt with a shotgun during the shotgun season. I hunt with a muzzleloader during muzzleloader, but I don't try to hunt with a muzzleloader during the archery season. Like, even if it was legal, like, that's not what the season it is designed for. Like, it's a designated archery season. Should be for archery. But then I even heard, just rambling, but there was one state, one of the eastern states, they wanted to allow straight wall cartridges in their muzzleloader season.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? Like, it's always trying to make it easier. I'm a little concerned about this, but we have I believe the removal of the southern shotgun zone is also on the omnibus, and it's like each county can decide if they want to be included or not included. I'm not necessarily against. I think we're going to see an increase in harvest for sure, but I know safety is not a huge aspect of it. I mean, rifle, we're flat. It's a little hilly behind me, but we're pretty flat where I'm at, and not a lot of trees. But I don't know. One of the first bills they had was it would be like by the county, but the county map doesn't line up with the deer permit map. So I'm like, that just makes a really complicated kind of grid work. Where can you use a rifle? Where can't you? So I would say if you're going to do it, do all or nothing. But what I had proposed when I testified was create, like, it doesn't have to be like an all or nothing kind of with crossbows, where we can find like a happy medium probably, where you could do straight wall or you could do lever action, bolt action. Because I think the main concern people have as far as safety is taking the first shot at the deer, missing, and now you're shooting at a running deer and we're flat. It might be uphill a little bit. It's a little concerning. But I'm also a huge gun guy and I support that, but I don't, it's not a Second Amendment issue either, though. It's a deer management and hunter management issue. And I just really wish we would get more data out of Minnesota.
I agree. I agree 100%. I would like to see more data, like I mentioned, on how many crossbow sales there were, not just archery in general. But essentially, you guys have 1 year, right, grace period here to collect data and go back down there and state your case on why you feel it should be pushed back. So if people are on board with you guys and they want to be a part of this and help you guys out, how do they become a member of Minnesota Bowhunters, and what do they need to do, or where can they find more information about you guys?
Yeah, so our website is minnesotabowhunters.org. We also have a mnbowhunters.org. If you go to the .com, it's a different organization that supports crossbows. So probably don't, if you want to support us, maybe don't put your money there. But we actually had we were up at the MSAA indoor championship in Cloquet, and we had a guy that tried signing up for us, got on their website, accidentally signed up for them. So try not to do that. Use a .org. You're in the right place if on the home page you scroll down and it's a petition with a big X on a crossbow.
Yep.
Like, that's us. And then we got our Facebook page, Minnesota Bow. It's Minnesota Bowhunters Inc. That's more of a social thing. I throw out a lot of. Sometimes I try to instigate some people, but early on it was how do we get as many people to contact the representatives as possible. So me shaking up the crossbow people a little bit hopefully got them to also call their representatives and complain about it, because then they're hearing from a lot more people than just us, which it just creates conflict and controversy, which they don't want any part of. They want happy voters for the most part. So yeah, Minnesota Bowhunters .org. And we're gonna be pretty involved this year, so talking to a lot of different archery clubs and just trying to support the community.
I was sitting there watching that video of you down there testifying, and I was waiting for you to say and look at the camera and say, not knowingly did I use performance-enhancing archery equipment? Just like the Major League Baseball players not knowingly use performance-enhancing drugs to help them hit home runs, but I didn't see that. But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on here and giving your viewpoint on what you guys have been doing. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day and just kind of letting everybody know who you guys are, what you guys are kind of fighting for, and just kind of sharing that information. So I really appreciate you coming on here. Also, let your wife and kids know I appreciate it as well, because I know how hard it is to put little ones to bed, because I can hear mine in there right now as well.
Or our 1-year-old actually goes down pretty easy. It's a 3-year-old that's she just struggles sometimes, but she's good though. But yeah, it's little kids. It's
no doubt. All right, well, thanks again, Nick. Thanks everyone else for listening. Till next time, we'll catch you later. Have a great day. And that's a wrap. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to the podcast. Special thanks goes out to Nick and his family for carving some time out of his day here to join me on the podcast. I know Nick is extremely passionate about keeping archery, if you will. But yeah, if you're interested in being a part of Minnesota Bowhunters, you can go to minnesotabowhunters.org. That is .org to find out more information. Like Nick said, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there'll be a state of Minnesota with a crossbow with an X through it. That is their page. There's not to be confused with another Minnesota Bowhunters website, but it's minnesotabowhunters.org if you're interested in taking a look at that. Also, he mentioned that there's a petition that the people are signing. There's a bunch of people that have signed it already, and they're looking for more people to do that as well. Along with that, I just want to thank you guys for just being so supportive of us and listening to these podcasts. Don't be afraid to share these podcasts with your friends, and give us a like on all our social media pages. Give us a follow, and we really do appreciate all your guys' support. If it weren't for you guys, none of this would be possible. And along with our partners, Arctic Shield, Domain Outdoor, J&R Outdoors, Skullcraft, The Fish Guide, TactCam, and Fourth Arrow Camera Arms. Right around the corner here, it is food plot season, so make sure you guys are checking in with Domain. They got a lot of great products over there. We've been using their stuff for quite some time now, and we really do appreciate those guys working with us year in and year out. So with that, I hope you guys are having a great start to spring. Hopefully you guys are getting some turkeys on the ground. I know I had a little issue the other day. I went out and I hit a nice tom and wasn't able to recover them. So that's, I think, going to be another topic for another podcast as far as how to hunt turkeys. So with that, we're going to wrap things up here. Hope you guys are having a great day. And once again, thanks for listening.